My name is Alina Marlowe, and in our sunlit San Diego loft, I thought I had everything, until I found that lipstick-stained receipt. One minute, I was a loyal wife. The next, I was questioning whether my own husband and his mother were plotting to steal the very apartment I fought so hard to buy. What would you do if the people closest to you were smiling in your face while quietly planning your downfall? Before I share exactly how I found out, I'd love to know, where are you watching this video from? Drop your city in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let me take you into the kitchen where my entire reality cracked wide open. It started with a coat, Jason's specifically. I was hanging it up like I always did, one of those little wifely things I used to take pride in. Navy wool, expensive, faintly smelling of his cologne, and something else I couldn't quite place. I reached into the inside pocket to check for receipts. He's notorious for forgetting to submit reimbursements, and that's when I found it. A crumpled valet stub and a narrow strip of glossy paper from a high-end lounge. 2 Flirtinis, 11:52 p.m. That in itself wasn't shocking. What stopped me cold was the kiss mark. Bright coral, like a stamp of ownership from someone who wasn't me. My breath caught. I stared at it as if it might morph into something more innocent if I gave it long enough. But it just sat there, smug, fragrant with Jason's betrayal. I heard his footsteps behind me. "Alina," he said casually, loosening his tie, "you're home early." "Yeah," I replied, slowly folding the receipt in half. "Slow day at the studio." He didn't notice my tone, or maybe he didn't care. He kissed the side of my head like he always did and walked straight to the fridge. I followed, receipt still in hand. "You were out late last night," I said evenly. Jason pulled out a bottle of water. "Meeting ran long, you know how clients are." I leaned against the counter, eyes locked on him. "Funny, I didn't know your clients wore coral lipstick." He froze, just for a second, a heartbeat of silence that told me everything before words even arrived. "What are you talking about?" I held up the receipt. His eyes flicked to it, and that charming, media-trained smile he always wore reappeared. "That's probably from the waitress. You know how they leave those things in bars. Not everything's a conspiracy, Alina. Not everything's a conspiracy." That's when I knew. It wasn't just the drink, or the time, or the lipstick. It was the way he said it, smooth, dismissive, rehearsed, like he'd been expecting this conversation for a while. I didn't speak, just nodded and placed the receipt on the granite island between us. Then came the voice that made me flinch, though not because it was unexpected. "Oh, are you two fighting?" Loretta asked brightly, gliding in like she owned the place. "I just came by to drop off Jason's favorite tea. That little wellness shop downtown was having a sale." Loretta Marlowe, my mother-in-law, master of casual cruelty dressed as care. She and I had never quite clicked, but in recent months her visits had increased, and so had her passive-aggressive jabs. "I was just saying to Jason," she added, now examining a succulent on the windowsill, "it's such a beautiful apartment. I wonder who'll inherit it one day." Silence. Again. Jason sipped his water, my pulse roared in my ears. "The apartment's in my name," I said slowly. "I bought it before we got married, remember?" "Oh yes, of course." Loretta gave a dismissive little wave. "Still, these things can get murky. Marital property laws, inheritance, all that fun stuff. You never know what the courts decide." It was so casual, so practiced. As if we were discussing tea blends, not my home. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, a fiery mix of humiliation, betrayal, and oddly clarity. Something was happening, something behind my back, and they weren't even hiding it well anymore. Jason reached for his keys. "I need to take a call," he mumbled, already heading toward the balcony. Coward. Loretta turned back to me with a smile so sweet it burned. "Alina, dear, you do have a plan in case things don't work out, right?" I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled right back. "I always do." I couldn't stay in that apartment. Not after what happened in the kitchen. Not with Loretta's smug little remark echoing in my ears. So I did what I always do when I'm trying not to fall apart. I walked. San Diego mornings have this deceptive softness to them. The breeze off the bay smells like salt and kelp, and the light hits the buildings just right, like everything's fine, like nothing's cracking at the seams. But my chest was tight, my hands cold even in the late summer warmth. I walked toward Seaport Village, keeping my pace slow. Tourists milled around, laughing, holding coffees, feeding crumbs to the seagulls. I envied them, strangers with no idea how their lives might detour. People who hadn't woken up next to a man they now couldn't trust. People whose mother-in-law hadn't hinted with perfect poise that their home might soon be up for grabs. I stopped near the edge of the marina and watched the boat sway lazily. I used to love mornings like this, before the undercurrents in my marriage started pulling me under. What hurt the most wasn't the receipt or the lipstick. It was the question Loretta asked. Who will inherit your apartment? It wasn't a slip. It was a strategy. She'd been circling this topic for months, now that I thought about it. Asking about joint assets, reminding me that Jason's done so much for you, commenting on how young couples should think ahead. I thought it was just idle chit-chat, but now I wasn't so sure. I sat on a bench facing the water, my legs suddenly weak. Pulling my jacket tighter, I tried to breathe through the nausea curling in my stomach. They were planning something. I felt it in my bones. I remembered the way Jason used to talk about our place. Our place. Back when I first gave him the keys after our wedding. I'd been so proud of that loft, a converted space near the Embarcadero with exposed brick, sky-high windows, and the kind of natural light every artist dreams of. It was mine. Paid in full from a career I built from scratch teaching modern dance and choreography. When Jason moved in, I added his touches. His favorite espresso machine. His minimalist desk. His framed black and white photos. I gave him space. I made it home for both of us. But lately, I'd started to feel like a guest in my own house. He'd been staying out later, brushing off my questions with vague answers. Loretta's visits grew more frequent, her eyes scanning the space like she was taking inventory. I thought I was being paranoid. Now I wasn't so sure. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and opened my notes app, scrolling back to something I'd jotted down 2 years ago. A reminder from my lawyer friend, back when I was planning to marry Jason. Apartment deed is solely in my name, protected by prenup signed 6 weeks before marriage. No marital claims. Reading that gave me a flicker of relief, but also raised more questions. If they knew the apartment wasn't Jason's, why act like it was? Why float inheritance jokes? Why act like they were entitled to it? Unless they were counting on me not knowing my own rights. Or worse, hoping to manipulate me into giving them up. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, the water rippling quietly in front of me. Maybe they thought I wouldn't fight back. Maybe they thought I was soft. Jason used to call me gentle in a way that sounded sweet, but also minimizing. She's not confrontational, Loretta had said once at a dinner party with a polite smile that stung. Elena's the peaceful type. I used to take that as a compliment. Now it sounded more like a prediction. When they were banking on, I stared down at my hands, steady now. I hadn't cried yet and I wasn't planning to. Not here, not when strangers might see. The thing about betrayal is it makes you recalibrate everything. Every laugh, every kiss, every memory, suddenly you're analyzing it, turning it over, searching for signs you missed. Had Jason been waiting for something to shift, hoping I'd transfer the deed, planning for a future without me? And Loretta, well, her loyalties were never in question. Still, part of me hoped, desperately, that I was wrong. That I'd wake up tomorrow and Jason would hand me a coffee and say, I messed up. I let my mom overstep. I stayed out late because I needed space, not because I was hiding anything. But in the quiet of that marina, surrounded by tourists and dog walkers and joggers with no idea of the storm inside me, I already knew the truth. This wasn't just about a receipt, or some lipstick, or Loretta's little games. This was a test of my awareness, my strength, my ability to protect what I'd built with my own hands. I looked out at the water and let the San Diego breeze whip through my hair. They thought I'd play nice. But they forgot I bought that apartment before I ever met Jason. And if they wanted a war, they should have remembered one thing: I never lose what's mine. I didn't plan to go through Jason's phone. That's not who I am. At least that's what I kept telling myself as I stood in the doorway of our bathroom, the sound of water pounding against tile giving me cover. Jason was singing, badly, and somewhere between the verse and chorus my morality buckled. The phone was on the charger, unlocked. Open on the nightstand like a dare. I walked toward it slowly, like it might bite. In my hand, it felt heavier than usual. Or maybe that was just the weight of everything else. The lipstick-stained receipt, Loretta's little inheritance quiz, and the quiet certainty building inside me. My thumb hovered over the Messages app. Don't do it, I told myself, but I did. The first name that caught my eye wasn't one I recognized. Cassie. No last name, just pink hearts next to it. How original. I opened the thread and instantly felt something twist in my gut. Her messages were shameless. Cassie, you looked so tense last night. Hope I helped. Can't wait for our little getaway. You owe me a sunset walk and a back massage, mister. I scrolled up. Fast, too fast. Photos, flirty jokes, screenshots of cocktail menus from places I'd never been, mentions of our spot in La Jolla. One picture of her holding what looked like Jason's hoodie. My hoodie, technically sitting on a hotel bed, feet tucked under her like she belonged there. I dropped the phone on the bed, heart thudding. The shower was still running. I stared at the bathroom door, 100 questions storming my brain but no words forming. So it was true. Cassie, a name that now sat in my chest like a stone. I took a breath, shaky but deep, and grabbed my own phone instead. My fingers moved before I could second-guess myself. "Me, are you free right now?" Mia, my sister, replied within seconds. "Mia, yeah, just finishing lunch. What's up? Me, need to talk. Can you come by?" 10 minutes later, she was knocking on my door. Mia's always been the baby of the family, but she's sharp. Heart on her sleeve, truth in her eyes. When she saw my face, her smile faded immediately. "Alina, what's going on?" I led her to the kitchen, the same one where Loretta had twisted the knife the day before. I couldn't bring myself to sit, so I leaned against the counter and told her everything, fast, low, without looking at her. The receipt, the lipstick, the messages, the name. She didn't interrupt, just nodded slowly, absorbing every word. Then she hesitated. "Alina, I didn't want to say anything because I thought maybe I was wrong, or maybe it wasn't my place, but now." She looked genuinely torn. "Say it," I said, more sharply than I meant to. She nodded. 2 weeks ago, I was in La Jolla. I was meeting someone for coffee at that little cafe near the cove, and I saw Jason. He was with someone. My stomach dropped. Describe her. Blonde, younger than us, tight jeans off shoulder top, kind of clingy. She kissed him. I mean, really kissed him. I was across the street, so I wasn't totally sure it was him, but now I know it was Jason. My knees buckled slightly, and I reached for the counter. "Why didn't you tell me?" Mia looked stricken. "Because I couldn't believe it, and because I didn't want to hurt you if it turned out to be a misunderstanding. But Alina, I knew something felt off, and now—" She trailed off, eyes wide with realization. "It's real," I said quietly. The silence that followed was louder than any shout. I felt something shift inside me, something final, like a door I couldn't close again. Jason was cheating. He was planning something with Loretta's help, and he thought I wouldn't figure it out until it was too late. Well, he underestimated me. Mia touched my arm gently. "What are you going to do?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stared out the window where the morning sun had shifted. The city glittered beyond our high-rise windows, glittering like everything was still intact, but it wasn't. "I'm going to find out exactly what he's after," I said at last, "and then I'm going to make sure he doesn't get it." I didn't sleep that night. Not because of rage, exactly. It was something colder, sharper, like my body knew what was coming and was gathering energy for a storm I hadn't yet seen. Jason was asleep beside me, breathing evenly like his conscience was clear. Or maybe like he thought mine would never catch up. At 2:17 a.m., I opened my notes app again and reread the line I'd typed years ago. "Apartment deed is solely in my name, protected by prenup." I needed that to be true, not just emotionally, but legally. Because if Jason and Loretta were as calculated as I suspected, they weren't just after my heart. They were after my home. By morning, I had made up my mind. I texted a name I hadn't thought about in years, Paul Kim. He was my real estate attorney when I first bought the condo. We'd met through a friend of a friend, and though he looked like he belonged more in a surf shop than a law office, the man was sharp, strategic, the kind of quiet that made people underestimate him until it was too late. "Me, hi Paul, it's Alina Marlowe. I'm in a bit of a situation with my husband regarding my property. Are you available to meet this week?" His reply came in under 5 minutes. "Paul, today at 2 p.m. My office. Bring everything you've got." The law office sat in a converted Victorian near Balboa Park, tucked behind a row of blooming jacaranda trees. Inside, it smelled like cedar and printer ink, clean, focused, calm. I needed that calm. Paul looked up as I entered, his black glasses perched low on his nose. "Alina," he said, standing to shake my hand. "Been a while. You still teaching at the studio?" "Not as much. Life got complicated." He nodded slowly, then gestured to the seat across from his desk. "Tell me everything." So I did. The late nights, the receipt, the lipstick, the name Cassie, Loretta's inheritance comments. the way Jason had gone cold and calculating when I brought up our place. Paul listened without interruption, typing occasionally, only raising his eyebrows once when I mentioned Loretta's sudden interest in ownership. When I finished, he leaned back, fingers steepled, and said the 3 words that let me breathe for the first time in days. "You're protected, Alina." My throat tightened. "Sure. I helped write your prenup, and I oversaw the condo purchase. It was closed in your name individually, not jointly. No co-mingling of funds from Jason, no secondary signatory. That place is yours." I blinked. "But if we divorce, he's entitled to nothing related to that property, not 1 square foot. The prenup is airtight, and unless you signed anything transferring interest to him after the marriage, which I assume you haven't." "Never. Then he's got no legal footing. Judge would give him a dime from that condo." A small, shaky breath escaped me. Paul smiled. "Honestly, it's one of the cleanest paper trails I've ever seen." "Then why?" I paused, unsure how to word it. "Why act like he's entitled to it?" Paul's eyes sharpened. "Because he's betting you don't know what you signed, or that you won't want the fight. Men like that and mothers like Loretta count on intimidation and manipulation, not facts." I nodded slowly. "Is there any way he could challenge it?" I asked. "Try to tie it into our marriage assets?" "He could try, but it would be laughed out of court. The only thing he might attempt is delaying tactics, trying to scare you into settlement or giving up rights to avoid conflict. That's why I recommend we draft a formal reaffirmation of your ownership now." "What does that mean?" "Essentially a letter from me to him and his counsel, making clear that you're aware of your rights and that you are prepared to defend your sole ownership. It's not required, but it's a shot across the bow." I liked the sound of that. Paul reached into a drawer and pulled out a slim folder. "I still have your original documents. I'll make updated copies for you. And if he or his mother tries anything, you call me. We'll shut it down." I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Relief, followed closely by hope. Jason didn't know I had spoken to a lawyer. He didn't know I still had every receipt, every deed, every signed page of our prenup carefully stored in a fireproof box in my closet. And he certainly didn't know I'd kept Paul's number. But now I knew I wasn't just emotionally betrayed. I was legally bulletproof. I stood to leave, grateful and steadier than when I'd arrived. "Alina," Paul said as I reached the door. I turned. "You're not crazy," he said gently. "You're just dealing with people who count on you being quiet." I smiled. "They're going to be disappointed." I got home just before 6. It was twilight in San Diego, those last golden blue hours where the sky forgets if it's day or night. I stood outside our building for a moment, watching the breeze lift the palms, wishing I could stay there forever. But I couldn't. The performance was about to begin, and I had a front row seat. When I stepped inside the loft, the air smelled like roasted garlic and something artificial, one of Loretta's favorite wax melts, cinnamon ambition. Fitting. Jason was at the stove, apron on, humming like a sitcom husband. Loretta sat perched on a bar stool, flipping through a design catalog she had no intention of ordering from. "There's my girl," Jason said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Long day," I returned the smile just as convincingly. "Productive." Loretta looked up. "You missed a call from the spa. They said your facial was confirmed for next week." She said it like she'd arranged it herself, like she lived here. I nodded, slipping out of my shoes and into a version of myself I barely recognized, pleasant, composed, quiet. I poured myself a glass of wine and leaned against the counter, watching Jason stir a pot of something he probably saw on TikTok. "Dinner smells great," I offered. "Thanks, we're celebrating," he said cheerfully. "Oh," Loretta answered for him. "New beginnings, isn't that what fall is about? Letting go of the old." I met her gaze. Her smile was soft, but her eyes weren't. "Sure," I said, taking a slow sip of wine. "Letting go can be refreshing." Jason chuckled as if we were sharing some private joke. "Alina, you've been so strong lately. I really admire that." I raised an eyebrow. "Strong." "Yeah, focused, centered," he said, choosing words like he was reading off an astrology app. "I know it hasn't been easy with all the changes, but you've handled things so gracefully." My grip on the stem of the wine glass tightened. "What changes?" He faltered for just a second. "You know, just growing apart a bit, shifting priorities." Loretta jumped in. "Couples evolve, it's healthy." I said, non-committal. "It's interesting you bring that up." Jason plated the food, something overcooked and too orange. He slid a dish in front of me like a peace offering. "Let's not get all serious. Tonight's about us, about moving forward." I wanted to laugh. Forward as in out of my own home. Instead, I picked up my fork and asked, "So what's next in this big forward motion of ours?" Jason hesitated. "We've just been thinking about resetting, maybe downsizing." Loretta added, simplifying. "I've read so much about minimalism lately. You know, less is more, clean slate." I took a bite of whatever he'd made and smiled sweetly. "Interesting, because I feel more grounded than ever." Loretta looked like she'd just bitten into a lemon. "Of course you do, dear." Jason tried to recover. "We just want what's best for everyone." "Everyone meaning who?" I asked quietly. He blinked. "Us, you, me, the whole family." "Funny, I thought this was our home and our life." Loretta set down her fork delicately. "Elena, no one's trying to take anything from you." That was the tell. No one had accused them yet. But she was already on defense. I smiled again. "Of course not." The rest of dinner passed in false harmony. Jason laughed too hard at nothing. Loretta praised her own salad like it was Michelin-starred. I nodded, smiled, made small talk about paint swatches and office renovations, whatever it took to get through it. But inside, I wasn't nodding. I wasn't smiling. I was memorizing every word, every glance, every calculated moment they shared when they thought I wasn't looking. They thought they were playing chess. They didn't realize I'd already flipped the board. I wasn't looking for confirmation. Not that night. It was a Thursday, and Jason had left his laptop open again. Loretta was staying over, another last-minute overnight, and I was mentally preparing to fake civility for one more day. I just wanted quiet. One evening without strategy or sarcasm, without code words for betrayal passed between bites of pasta. I didn't get that evening. Instead, I got the door. The guest room door was cracked open, just slightly, just enough to hear a familiar laugh drift through the hallway, Jason's, then Loretta's. Low, conspiratorial, I should have kept walking. But something gut, gravity, instinct froze me in place. I moved closer, silent, barefoot, barely breathing. "Try it again," Loretta was saying. "From the beginning, keep your shoulders square, speak slowly, and look her in the eye." Jason cleared his throat. "Elena, this isn't easy, but I've been doing some thinking, and I've decided to make a change for myself." A pause. "No," Loretta said, cutting him off. "That sounds weak. You have to own it. You're not asking permission, you're making a statement. She needs to feel the finality." I stared at the door, heartbeat climbing, unsure if I was dreaming. Jason started again, firmer this time. "Elena, I've met someone. I want someone younger, someone who sees the world differently." There was a rustling, probably Loretta adjusting the way he stood. "And," he sighed dramatically, "I'm filing for divorce, and tomorrow I want you out of the apartment." My hand flew to my mouth. Loretta clapped. "That's it, perfect, right to the point. Strong, decisive. Men don't need to explain themselves to women who don't listen." They laughed, they laughed. I backed up one step, too, until I reached the wall beside the linen closet. My knees trembled. My breath came in shallow pulls. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I might be sick right there in the hallway. But I didn't move. I couldn't, because they weren't finished. "What if she starts crying?" Jason asked, his voice uncertain for the first time. "She won't," Loretta replied. "She's too proud, but if she does, stay calm, don't let it sway you, and if she brings up the apartment, you say, 'It's a shared home now, it's no longer just yours.'" He said it like he'd practiced it a dozen times, like he believed it. "You'll have the crowd on your side," Loretta said. "People love a man taking charge, especially at your anniversary dinner. It's poetic. You'll come off like the one being honest." "And what if she throws a fit?" he asked. "She won't," Loretta said smoothly. "Elena's not like that. She'll bottle it. That's her weakness. She'd rather suffer in silence than look dramatic." I felt the words like a slap, my weakness. They thought I'd stay quiet, that I'd swallow the betrayal. Thank them for the knife they twisted. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear hit the inside of my wrist. I clenched my fists. This wasn't just betrayal. It was performance. A carefully rehearsed unveiling of their scheme. And they were planning to unveil it with an audience. Friends, colleagues, maybe even family, at a rooftop restaurant on our anniversary, because humiliation wasn't just an accident anymore. It was a strategy. I stepped away from the door, quietly, slowly, like I just stepped on a minefield and had to retrace my steps without exploding. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared into the dark. My pulse drummed in my ears. The weight of what I'd heard pressed down on my chest like a stone slab. This wasn't about Jason falling out of love. This was about power, control, exile. They weren't trying to end a marriage. They were trying to erase me from my own life. But here's the thing about people who plot behind closed doors. They forget sometimes, doors open. And now that mine had, I was done pretending I hadn't heard everything. The night air was perfect. San Diego does that. Gives you these cinematic evenings, balmy and scented with hibiscus and sea salt, as if the city wants to make your worst moments feel beautiful. It was the kind of night people remember for years. Jason was counting on that. Our anniversary dinner was at a trendy rooftop restaurant near the Gaslamp Quarter, his choice, of course. Everything had been prearranged. The private table, the sweeping view, the hand-picked wine list. The waiter even greeted us with, "Happy anniversary, Mr. and Mrs. Marlowe," like this was a love story. I wore black, sleek, understated. The kind of dress that let my silence speak louder than anything I could say. Jason wore the navy blazer I bought him last Christmas. We were seated near the glass railing. The city glittered below us, thousands of lights from people living their lives, unaware of the theater about to unfold above their heads. Jason looked smug. His smile was tight, practiced. He kept checking his watch like something important was about to arrive. And it was, I already knew. Loretta had done her job well, drilling the lines into him, and now he was ready for his performance. I just wasn't going to give him the reaction he rehearsed for. We ordered dinner. He was unusually attentive, topping off my wine, asking about my week, complimenting the dress he hadn't noticed the first 3 times I wore it. He even reached across the table and touched my hand. "Alina," he said, all warmth and false intimacy. "I just want tonight to be memorable." Oh, it will be, right on cue, just as dessert was being placed before us, some overly fussy trio of chocolate textures. Jason stood. "Excuse me," he said to the waiter, "we'll need one more seat." I sipped my espresso, not a flicker of surprise on my face. Jason turned to me with a performative smile. "You remember Cassie, don't you?" And there she was, Cassie. Blonde, 20-something, wearing a dress that screamed effort and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She walked over like she owned the place, her heels clicking against the polished concrete, and slid into the seat Jason pulled out for her. Around us, the atmosphere shifted. Subtle at first, then sharper. Waiters slowed their steps. Diners glanced over their menus. Someone gasped. Phones were quietly angled toward us. Jason cleared his throat and began his speech. "Alina," he said, addressing me like an HR manager about to conduct an exit interview. "I've been thinking a lot about where I'm headed, about what I need in life, and I've realized I want something different, something new." Cassie smiled like this was her prom. Jason continued, "I've met someone who makes me feel alive again, and I've decided to move forward with her." He didn't look ashamed. He looked pleased. Then came the dagger. "I'm filing for divorce. And tomorrow, I'd like you to begin making arrangements to leave the apartment." Silence. The kind that turns air heavy. The kind people hold their breath through. I looked at him, long enough to make it uncomfortable. Then I set down my spoon and folded my napkin carefully on the table. "That's quite the announcement," I said softly. Jason blinked, waiting for the tearful collapse, for the scene, for the woman who would beg and plead and fall apart in front of a crowd. Instead, I reached for my clutch and stood. I met Cassie's eyes briefly. She looked nervous now, unsure if she'd signed up for Triumph or target practice. Then I looked back at Jason. His face still held that frozen smile. "Happy anniversary," I said calmly. "It's the last thing you'll ever take from me." And with that, I turned. No screams, no sobs, just heels tapping against concrete, my back straight, my hands steady. Behind me, I heard whispers. The clatter of a fork dropped in shock. A waiter hurrying after me, offering to call a car. I didn't need one. I'd already planned my exit. Jason thought he'd humiliate me. Instead, he gave me the audience. And now they knew the truth. I didn't make it far from the rooftop, maybe 20 steps. I could still hear the music, the laughter, the clinking of wine glasses behind me. Then his voice. "Alina, wait!" Jason, of course. He jogged up behind me like this was a rom-com finale, like I'd misunderstood what just happened. "I didn't expect you to leave so quickly," he said, breathless. "You didn't even let me finish." "Oh, trust me," I said, turning to face him. "You finished plenty." He blinked. "We can talk, privately. This isn't how I wanted you to what? React, fall apart, get hysterical in front of strangers so you and your bottle blonde life upgrade could play the victims." He winced. A small crowd had gathered near the glass doors behind us. The hostess. Some diners pretending to check their phones. A guy with a camera rig, probably a food blogger, hovered just close enough. "You brought another woman to our anniversary dinner," I said, loud enough for every ear to catch it. then told me in public to vacate the home I bought. Jason glanced around, suddenly aware of the attention. Okay, let's not do this here. No, let's. I stepped forward. You want bold declarations, let's go. I turned to the crowd. We live in a loft near Seaport Village, beautiful place. High ceilings, art on the walls, sunlight like you wouldn't believe. And every inch of it, paid for by me, bought before we married, in my name only, protected by a prenup he barely skimmed. Jason's face drained, gasps rippled. A waiter dropped a fork. And just so we're clear, I added, he gets nothing, not the loft, not the rights, not even the couch. Cassie appeared behind him, arms crossed, jaw tight. Loretta followed, dramatically pressing her palm to her chest like she'd just stepped into a telenovela. Elena, she said, voice quivering, how dare you do this to my son in front of strangers? No, Loretta, I cut in, turning toward her. How dare you come into my home, sip my wine, sleep under my roof, and then whisper to your son that it should belong to someone else? She blinked rapidly, stepping closer. You ungrateful girl, after everything we've done for you. Oh, do tell, I said. Remind me what you've done besides leave condescending post-it notes on my fridge and rehearse my public humiliation like it was a scene from Macbeth. A few people chuckled. Loretta flushed. Jason tried again. This isn't helping anyone. Then here's something that might. I pulled out a folded letter from my purse, the one Paul Kim drafted. I held it up for him to see. This is a legal notice affirming my sole ownership of the apartment. It's been filed, sent to your lawyer, and it's on record. So if you so much as breathe near my property, I'll sue for harassment. The crowd's collective gasp could have powered a wind turbine. Jason opened his mouth, then closed it. Then Loretta stepped in again, this time dramatically placing a hand on his shoulder. She's cruel, Jason. You gave her everything. And this is how she repays you. I tilted my head. You know what's funny, Loretta? I asked. If you'd both just told the truth from the beginning, if Jason had the decency to be honest instead of staging a public ambush, you might have left with some dignity. But now, I looked around at the sea of half-raised phones and stunned expressions. You're going to be internet famous. Loretta's expression cracked. This is defamation, emotional abuse. But the moment was already out of her hands. Someone in the corner whispered, "Is this real?" Another woman shook her head, muttering, "She's a legend." Someone clapped one awkward, stunned clap that turned into two, then four, then a smattering of applause from amused strangers with full bellies and front row seats to karma. I didn't bow. I didn't smile. I just walked away. This time, Jason didn't follow. Cassie stayed frozen in place. And Loretta, well, she finally stopped talking. 3 days passed before he came back. I knew he would. That's the thing about men like Jason. They don't disappear, they hover. They linger like perfume you never liked, familiar, cloying, impossible to wash out. The viral clip had been shared over 70,000 times. Friends texted me screenshots. Strangers tagged me in comment threads. People started calling me the queen of the rooftop. I didn't respond to any of it. I didn't want to be a meme. I just wanted my life back. But Jason, he wanted an audience. I heard the knock around 8:30 p.m. soft, hesitant. The kind of knock that hoped the person behind the door was still too empathetic to ignore it. I opened it anyway. There he stood, damp eyes, wrinkled shirt, one hand clutching a bouquet of lilies like they were some sort of magic wand that could erase what he'd done. "Elena," he said, barely above a whisper. I didn't say a word. I messed everything up." No response. "She left me," he blurted. "Cassie, she said it was all too much, too dramatic, too public. Said I humiliated her. Can you believe that?" Yes, I could. He held out the flowers. "I know I've hurt you, but you've always been the calm one, the steady one. You never explode. You think things through. I realize now what I lost." Still silent. "I wasn't myself, Elena. My mom, she pushed me and I let her. I thought I wanted something new, but all I did was destroy the one good thing I ever had." He paused, swallowed hard. "I want to come home." Home, that word. As if he hadn't tried to rip it from under me. As if he hadn't stood 10 feet from me and told me to vacate my own life. "Elena," he said again, softer now. "Please say something." I met his eyes then, not with rage, not even sadness, just the kind of stillness that comes after a hurricane, when everything's already broken and there's no point trying to explain the wind. "I'm not angry," I said quietly. His eyes lit up, hopeful. "I'm not anything." His hope faltered. "I let you speak," I added. "That's more than you gave me." Jason stepped forward like he was about to fall to his knees. Just tell me what I need to do. I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling. I'll go no contact with my mom. You should have thought about that, I said, before rehearsing my humiliation with her like it was community theater. He flinched. You don't need to list promises. This isn't a negotiation. There's no deal to be made. He tried one last angle. We have history. History doesn't entitle you to a future. And with that, I closed the door. Not fast, not loud, just slowly, softly, deliberately. I heard him on the other side, still standing there, waiting, maybe praying for the knob to turn again, for some flicker of the old Alina to peek through. But that version of me, she left the moment he tried to auction off my dignity over dinner. I turned away, dropped the flowers in the kitchen sink, and washed my hands. They smelled like lilies. And endings. There's something oddly sacred about a lawyer's office at dusk. Quiet, intent, focused, no distractions, no soft glances across the table, no shared whine or half-hearted apologies, just fluorescent lights, manila folders, and truth with timestamps. I had become a different woman in that conference room. 3 weeks before the court date, I met with Paul Kim and his team twice a week, sometimes more. No makeup, hair tied back, sweatshirt sleeves pushed up like armor. They saw me for who I was now, the strategist, the note-taker, the woman who didn't flinch at ugly truths because she'd already lived through them. And I had documentation, emails, prenup copies, deed records, but that wasn't all. I had screenshots, texts Jason sent while I cooked dinner, memes he forwarded to Cassie while we sat beside each other watching TV, hotel confirmations buried in deleted folders, voice memos Loretta had once left, saved under reminders, saying things like, once Alina signs over the guest room, we'll get to the rest. Every little thing they thought I missed, I had found it. Even Loretta's social media trail, subtle posts, captions that seemed benign until you read them in order. A whole campaign of superiority and not so subtle shade aimed at me. Some people inherit class. Others marry into it and still miss the memo. Hall's paralegal was a genius named Nina who organized it all into digital folders. Color-coded tabs, chronological evidence, even a timeline slide deck. It was elegant, precise, and ruthless in a way I didn't need to be out loud. It spoke for me. Jason tried twice more to make contact. Once through a mutual friend, once via handwritten notes slid under my door. The letter began with "I've changed" and ended with "I know we're meant to grow old together." It went straight into the file. Hall read it, smirked, and added a sticky note. Emotional bait, keep for pattern. He taught me how to reframe their manipulation in legal terms, how to stay detached while reviewing the narrative I'd lived through. It's not personal anymore, he said once. It's just pattern recognition. You've already survived the hard part. Now it's just proving it. But Jason, he hadn't changed strategy. He showed up to the building lobby one evening while I waited for my Uber, pretending it was a coincidence. Alina, he said, wearing a slightly wrinkled button-down. No flowers this time. You look serious. I said nothing. I just wanted to say good luck, at court. Good luck, I repeated flatly. Yeah, I mean, we're still us. I know things got off track. I turned to him slowly. We are not still us. There is no off track when the train was purposefully derailed. He ran a hand through his hair. I didn't think you'd go this far. There it is, I said. The real sentence. What? You didn't think I'd fight back? His mouth opened, closed. That's not what I meant. But it's what you believed. I stepped into my Uber without waiting for his reply. Jason could try sympathy, charm, backpedaling, but I'd already filed everything. The statements, the photos, the certified letters. It was no longer a conversation. It was a record. And I didn't need revenge. I needed recognition of the effort, the deception, the false narrative they built, and the truth I refused to let be swallowed by it. Paul told me I was one of the most prepared clients he'd ever worked with, but I wasn't proud. Not exactly. I was clear. And when you're clear, there's no noise left to drown in. Courtrooms aren't what you see on television. There's no dramatic music, no perfectly timed gasp, no judge pounding a gavel with theatrical fury. Just silence, stale air, and the rustle of paperwork. But inside that stillness, war happens. The morning of the hearing, I wore gray. Not black for mourning, not red for power, gray. Quiet, sharp, forgettable if you didn't know better. Paul told me to blend in, let the facts do the work. But I think he underestimated how much strength lives in stillness. Jason and Loretta arrived 15 minutes late. She wore a neck brace. A neck brace. I looked at Paul. He didn't even flinch. just scribbled preemptive sympathy play on his legal pad. Jason shuffled behind her, eyes red-rimmed, like he hadn't slept, or like he wanted everyone to think that. He made a show of pulling out Loretta's chair, helping her lower into it, kissing her temple like this was family brunch and not a courtroom where they were trying to carve me out of my own life. Their lawyer stood. He was older, smooth-voiced, with a practiced concern that sounded like a bedtime story. "Your Honor, my client has endured an emotionally distant, cold household for years. Entered this marriage in good faith. He supported his wife's career. His mother was even welcomed into the home and has since experienced distress so severe she now requires physical therapy." Loretta sniffled on cue. Jason nodded solemnly, dabbing the corner of his eye. Then came the accusation that I was controlling, that I weaponized our prenup to threaten and isolate, that I was more interested in dominance than partnership. They painted me as an emotional iceberg. Efficient, calculated, unyielding. The irony, they were describing themselves. When Paul stood, his tone was pure steel under velvet. "Your Honor," he said calmly, "we will show this is not a case of emotional abuse or neglect, but one of strategic long-term manipulation, in which the plaintiff's assets were targeted under the guise of affection. We will demonstrate not just financial independence, but malicious intent by both defendant and his mother to undermine legal protections already in place." And then he handed the judge a binder. Tab A, the prenup, ironclad. Tab B, the deed filed solely in my name. Tab C, Loretta's social media. Thinly veiled jabs, inheritance plans. Tab D, the recording of her comment about who gets the apartment, lifted from our home security system's audio. Tab E, the guest room conversation, the rehearsal, we had cleaned it, muted irrelevant background noise, transcribed it, labeled each voice. Jason's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Jason tried to argue the recording was taken out of context, then cried, then accused me on the stand of being emotionally punishing and manipulating his reality. That phrase stuck with me, manipulating his reality. Because isn't that what they'd done? Created a whole fantasy where I was supposed to step quietly aside while they took everything I built. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't raise my voice once. I didn't cry. I stated facts. I described the pattern, the timelines, the sudden shift in Jason's behavior, Loretta's escalating presence. The moment I found the lipstick-stained receipt, the night I overheard the plan, I described the humiliation, the public ambush, the viral fallout, and I ended with one line. I was not the one trying to dissolve a marriage, I was the one trying to preserve myself. Silence. The judge removed her glasses. She didn't deliberate long. All claims to joint interest in the property are denied. The prenup holds. No financial damages are owed to the defendant. This case is closed. Just like that, Jason's lawyer sat down hard. Loretta gasped. "This is a travesty. I raised him better." "Ma'am," the judge cut in sharply, "this is a courtroom, not a stage." I looked at Paul. He smiled, just barely. Outside the courthouse, I stood on the steps as the morning sun lit the sky. I wasn't elated. I wasn't even relieved. I was realigned. Everything was finally where it belonged. I had just reached the bottom of the courthouse steps when my phone buzzed. It was Mia. She never called during work hours unless it was urgent, and somehow I already knew this was going to be the final card falling. "Hey," I answered, stepping off to the side near a palm tree casting soft shadows on the pavement. "Everything okay?" Her voice came fast, breathless. "You're not going to believe this." "Mia," I said slowly, still on edge from court, "please don't tell me you ran into Jason." "Worse or better, depending on how you look at it," she said. "He got fired." I blinked. "Fired? 2 weeks ago from the marketing firm. Turns out the rooftop video went more viral than you thought. Clients started asking if he was that guy who dumped his wife during a dessert course. The partners pulled security footage, figured out he used company time to send flirty emails to Cassie, and it all unraveled." My jaw tightened. "So he's been unemployed this whole time?" "Yup," Mia confirmed. "He's been pretending everything's fine while job hunting in secret. Oh, and it gets better. Of course it does. Loretta kicked him out." I actually laughed. "You're kidding." "Nope," she said, clearly relishing this. She apparently saw the unedited clip someone posted to TikTok, complete with her grandstanding, fake tears, and you calling her out in front of strangers. She lost her bridge club sponsorship. Her name's basically meme gold now. Oh my God. She told Jason he humiliated the family, made her look unstable, and that her neighbors are whispering every time she walks her dog, so she told him to pack his bags and go. I leaned back against the sun-warmed wall, my laughter catching in my chest, not from joy exactly, from sheer disbelief at the way everything had crumbled. They wanted to unhouse me. Instead, they'd undone themselves. "You okay?" Mia asked more softly now. I looked out across the busy street. Cars passed. A couple argued playfully over a parking meter. Life was still moving, but I was no longer stuck in their storm. "I'm okay," I said. "I think I'm better than okay." There was a pause, then Mia whispered, "You're kind of a legend, you know." "I don't want to be a legend," I replied. "I just wanted peace." "Then take it," she said. "You earned it." We hung up, and I just stood there for a moment, letting the quiet wrap around me. The courthouse doors behind me were closed now. So were all the versions of myself that walked in there afraid, bracing, doubting. The sun was blinding but beautiful. I took the long way home, walked slowly along the marina, letting the wind tangle in my hair. There was nothing to rush toward anymore. No more masks to wear. No more lines to rehearse. Just clean, solid ground beneath my feet. And a future no one else got to write. 1 year later, the same rooftop. Different woman. The breeze is gentler tonight. Or maybe it just feels that way because I'm no longer bracing for anything. There's wine, laughter, and music playing low from a portable speaker tucked beside a potted lavender plant. I filled the space with people who carry kindness in their voices and books in their bags. My book club. It started small, just Mia and a coworker or two. But it grew. Word spread. Apparently, people like gathering in high places to talk about fictional people who make better choices than we did. "Is this prose or poetry?" Janine asks, waving a paperback and grinning. "Both," I answer. "That's the trick." We laugh, pass more crackers. A breeze stirs the candle flames inside their glass jars. The air smells like rosemary and possibility. I catch myself glancing toward the corner of the terrace. That's where Jason stood a year ago, delivering his polished performance. The table we sat at that night is gone now, donated to a local theater company, oddly enough. I bought a new one. Sleek, simple, built to last. Inside, hanging in a matte black frame just above the entryway, is a printed copy of the court's final ruling. It's not there to brag, it's there to remember. To remind me how dangerously close I came to losing everything, not just a home, but my sense of self. And how I clawed it back, one truth at a time. Mia arrives late, holding a bottle of red and a bag of homemade biscotti. She hugs me tight and whispers, "Still the queen of the rooftop. Don't jinx it." I laugh. She leans in conspiratorially. "Have you heard the latest about Loretta?" I smirk. "No, and I'd like to keep it that way." She raises an eyebrow. "Even if I tell you she's now teaching an online etiquette class?" I blink. "You're lying." She holds up her phone, promo video and everything. We both burst out laughing. It echoes across the open air, sharp and real and light. There's no bitterness left, no heaviness. Just the absurd clarity that life keeps moving. And sometimes, the ones who tried to sink you end up paddling in their own puddles of consequence. Later, after the club disperses and the night settles soft around me, I walk to the edge of the rooftop alone. The city stretches beneath me, golden and humming. I don't think about Jason anymore, or Loretta, or Cassie, wherever she is. I think about the girl I used to be, the one who loved quietly, trusted fully, and stayed small to keep the peace. And I whisper to her, "You made it out. You turned the humiliation into power, the betrayal into evidence, the silence into testimony. And this rooftop, it's yours now." I pour the last splash of wine into my glass, raise it to the sky, and toast not just survival, but authorship. Because no one's writing over me again.